Hello, ADNC family. I hope all is well. Emma Ansah here, coming to you live, and I'm coming to you with my co-host today, Selam Debs. Selam Debs is a anti-racism educator, life coach, business owner, and she is one of those people that turns tables out here in Canada. Okay, Selam, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are going to talk about a topic here that you caused the firestorm with one of the folks who goes by the name of Lilly Gaddis. And if anybody doesn't know who she has a YouTube channel where literally her whole brand is about just going in on Black people. She is an outstanding anti-Black racist. And her whole brand, like I said, everything she makes and earns is off the backs of Black people. And Salam is, as I said, an anti-Black or racism coach, educator here in Canada. And she's very vocal and loud with bringing the truth, okay? The truth about our people. And it rattles feathers like you wouldn't believe. The folks out here in Canada come for Salam. But you know what? Before I go any further, I'm going to allow Salam to tell us a little bit more about herself before we get into this.
It's good to be here, my good sis. Thank you so much for having me. A little bit about myself. Yes, so I'm an anti-racism educator. I primarily focus on anti-Black racism within the Canadian context because, in Canada, they try to pretend that racism doesn't exist.
They sure do.
Right. So a big part of my work is truth telling, is telling the truth, is providing facts, data, statistics, information, and just really, teaching organizations and companies. But also I have my own course where I teach folks all across, North America and across the world, really. And I'm just a very big believer that of the belief of Black people coming together in terms of the diaspora, Black diasporans, and uniting. And once we start to understand the truth about what's been done to us and how the things they don't want us to know, I think what happens is we begin to create more of a united front and we can fight anti-Black racism in a real way.
So when you do these courses, you're not only just doing them virtually, because I know you do them virtually. I actually attended one, and you also are going into businesses and you're, teaching the folks how not to be a racist, basically. So how does that go for you?
Yeah, it is very interesting. I've taught in many organizations, a lot online, but a lot in person too, where you go in and you educate them and you say words that they don't feel comfortable hearing. You talk about truths that they're not comfortable talking about. But there's pushback for sure. There is support, especially for my Black sisters when they're in the space, when they're in the room. I'm like, thank you, Lord, we're gonna be okay. But for the people, it can be, it's like a rude awakening for a lot of folks, especially within the Canadian context, to have to come to terms with who they are, who they've been, who their ancestors are, and that they can't hide behind racism with a smile, that they have to confront who they are and how they perpetuate harm. So it's not easy, parts of my story, Emma, that I've had to, really be careful in terms of security. I've had to be careful in terms of my own safety, because this work is considered taboo in where we live. You know what I mean? Where you think about the States, it's a much more normalized conversation. So I always admire the work that Black folks do in the States, because I'm like, thank goodness, like they have that foundation. And I feel like we're still building on that foundation here.
Building, it's like pushing a bunch of massive boulders up a hill in Canada, okay? It's so systemic and baked in. It's just like you literally have to knock everything down, literally, and build from scratch. But speaking of the United States, as I said, we have this woman, Lilly Gaddis, who is really mad, big mad at you, Salam, because you said that we need to segregate. We as Black people, that is. And it really burned her britches to the point where she did a whole segment on you. But before we play what Miss Lilly Gaddis had to say, just tell us why you actually recorded that video talking about saying that we need to be segregated. Like what triggered that?
Yeah. So, interesting enough, I teach yoga meditation. I used to have a yoga studio for over 8.5 years. And people will bring me, organizations and companies will bring me into spaces to teach. And I have found that a lot of spaces that are supposed to be for healing end up being co-opted and stolen by white folks. Like you think about meditation and yoga, it's like it is a practice. These practices are actually, practices for our own healing. And so what I would do is I would create spaces. For example, for the University of Guelph, I created a Black only space. It was for Black educators, faculty, students, and it was a space for us to, breathe and move and just be in community. And so actually the university supported it. They were behind it. We had the session, and of course, somehow it got picked up by the, who's, and they began to kind of create this rhetoric. And all of a sudden, the attacks started to come in, and attacks, threats to my safety and all that type of thing, calling me, a Black segregationalist and calling me, a racist, which we know Black people cannot be racist. There's no such
Ever.
thing. Right, ever. And so there was this whole kind of process, this whole attacking campaign that happened. And so when I recorded the video, it was my reflection. After we had this beautiful session just for Black folks, I like sat in my car and I was like, it's wild that we can't just have things for us and not be like, why are you in our business? Like, we're just trying to breathe and heal and relax. And so I was speaking on that in my car that day.
And the obsession is real, like real, for real. It's insane how obsessed. But let's go ahead. Oh gosh, let's go ahead and listen to what Miss Lilly has to say. And, we'll stop in between and address it because I cut it down, but it was roughly around 5 minutes. So hang with me, family, and let's just watch and break it down as we go along. And my ah sorry, folks. Give me a moment. Look at that. I'm sorry, folks. Of course, my system doesn't want to show her.
Oh.
Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Please hold.
That's what you want. All right. More power to you. Honestly, I'm not going to stop you.
This is why we need affinity spaces. And this is why we need Black only and racialized spaces. And, one of the last Black prioritized spaces that I ran at University of Guelph, I experienced an intense level of harm, being called a segregationalist and a racist. And
that's because you are. Sorry. It's because you are. Again, I honestly, this is a movement I could get behind, to be honest. So yes, actually this woman's a W right here, but it's a bit rich that if you feel like we're encroaching on your spaces, not exactly the other way around. At least when you're around white people, you're not in fear of your life.
I'm just going to stop right there. Sis, she said, at least when you're around white people, you're not in fear for your life. What? What have you got to say about that, sis?
I mean, it's so diabolical to make a statement of that like that when we know as Black people our experiences in like, first of all, historically, what Europeans have perpetuated against Black people across the diaspora. When we think just about the continent of Africa. Almost all 54 countries have been colonized, have been extracted, exploited. Millions and millions of Black African people, enslaved, stolen, kidnapped from the continent, brought to Europe and to the West. And we know the constant racial profiling, the systemic barriers, like the actual literal risks to our lives. So it's absolutely just diabolical and ridiculous to make a comment like that, because we know that we have data that shows that there is no actual history in the world where Black people have done that to Europeans. There's no history where we have gone into European countries and, violated them for hundreds and hundreds of years. So yeah, it's nonsensical, really.
Not to mention the fact that even police officers unalive a lot of our Black brothers. So saying that you're not even safe with some law enforcement. So the idea, anyway, the caucasity. Let us keep going.
Just say that.
A Black supremacist, because we are deliberately creating spaces where we can exhale, where we can be.
Apparently they can't exhale around white people too. That's interesting. That's another version of the I can't breathe.
Sad. I'm sad today, and thankfully I have tools and ways to be able to reground myself and care for my nervous system and get back to where I want to.
This is a megalomaniac, by the way. I don't even know what she's rambling on about. I don't even think she knows what she's rambling on about. It's just about her.
I'm stopping again. So she said that you're rambling and it's just about you. When you're talking about us, you're talking about our people. And by the way, to the people in the chat who are asking where Selam is from, she is Ethiopian, okay? She's from Africa, the motherland. And I too am from Ghana, the motherland, the continent of Africa. Does that help?
And Salam actually means peace, which is...
There you go.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of years of Black legacy in the continent of Africa, where the human race began, actually, and the oldest remains of the human race.
There you have it. So she says that you're just blathering about yourself. Let us keep going.
Mental health, my regrounded, I want to be able to breathe. Oh, I'm sorry that the school told you that you can't segregate Black only areas. Oh, I'm sorry that a school that the taxpayer pays for, that you're not allowed to say, hey, white people whose taxpayer money goes for this place, hey, white people who are paying to be on this university, you're not allowed to be in this area. This is a Black only area. Oh, wow. How tragic of that school.
First of all, she's lying.
Right.
At no time did we say anything, or did you say anything about the school saying you can't or cannot do anything. So, this is this is another person who doesn't do her homework, obviously, and really know who she's talking about. So, I always say, if you're going to talk about something, at least know what you're talking about. What have you got to say, sis?
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, because actually the schools supported the spaces and the affinity spaces, something that Black people fought for in the university, by the way, for us to be able to have these spaces to be able to heal. And this idea, that she was saying that I'm just talking about myself, it's actually, the sadness is about what Black folks have to go through in order for us to just have spaces for ourselves. They don't want us around. They don't like us. And so when we create spaces that are just for us, somehow she has something to say, of course.
Yes, let us keep going.
Terrible of that school to say, hey, you're actually not allowed to do that because those people are paying to be at the school too. Hey, you're actually not allowed to do this because this is a state-run school and the taxpayer money pays for this. So boo-hoo you. Sorry you didn't get your Black-only space.
Being where I need to be, but I want y'all to understand that when y'all don't do the work and educate your family and your staff members and your community, you harm us.
What she's saying, what? Is she talking about Black people here or white people? Okay, dear white people, okay. Educate yourself and do the work. What are you talking about?
Oh, but tell her, please school her. What are you talking about, sis? I mean, I know what you're talking about, but she clearly is lost. So tell us what you were talking about.
Right. I mean, we want to educate them about themselves, like who you are and your lineage as Europeans, and the mass just harm and violence that they have perpetuated, and the continued harm that they continue to perpetuate. Like, there were times where we as Black people did have Black only communities and places, which I know, we'll talk about. And they were burnt down. They were, massacres happened in order to prevent us from having economic or spiritual or physical, well-being and upward mobility. So, the education is like, look at y'all selves in the mirror and like understand how harmful y'all are, that you don't like, you have such a problem with us thriving in any capacity. And that is the legacy of European identity. It's the truth.
Exactly. And the ugly truth really just affects them, right? And they don't like having that mirror put in front of them. And that's really what it boils down to. So, yeah, let us keep going. It's not going to be too much longer because we're not going to waste too much time on this because we're going to talk about it from a broader scope.
It often isn't safe for us as Black and brown, indigenous, and racialized peoples to be in white majority spaces. Because when we do...
How exactly? How? Because I'm having a lot of examples of it not being safe for whites to be in Black only spaces. Austin Metcalf's a pretty good example of that. He's around one Black person that didn't end well. So where's your examples, actually? I'd like some proof.
All right. So she's asking for some proof. Like, clearly, again, somebody who really doesn't do her homework or chooses not to. Because, I mean, I don't think she's unintelligent, right? It's that lack of wanting to understand and the gaslighting and and the deflection and all of the things that happens a lot with some of the folks, especially people like this where their whole brand is about this, right? So take it away, sis.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is when we think about safety, whether it be racial profiling by policing, whether it be the fact that, for example, I have a Black son who's 20 years old, and the harm that he has to come up against, the ways in which they see him as a threat, they see him as older, they see him as bigger, they see him as dangerous, they see him as predatory. The ways in which in the workplace, I can't count how many Black women I know that work in, organizational settings. I'm fortunate enough to, work for myself. But when you work in corporations and when you work in, in these industries, how you are treated, the way in which you are constantly told that you are angry, that you are aggressive, and you constantly have to have your guard up because it's not safe. It literally is unsafe for you to just speak, to share your perspective, to have confidence. It could lead to you being fired, which impacts how you're going to care for your family. It could lead to you not being promoted. It could lead to you, being arrested. It could lead to you being unalived. And it's like recognizing that we constantly have this, this understanding when we're walking out in the world and how we're treated. Yeah.
Exactly. And like I always say, it's systemic. And we can have the same reaction to something in the corporate workspace or on the road. And if the folks have that reaction, they're labeled differently. We're labeled as angry. We're labeled as I'm scared for my life. We're labeled as they came at me so aggressive. Why are you attacking? That's the word. They love to use that trope, attacking me. And if you're a bigger person, like you just described your son, the big Black man came at me, all of those things that she's saying, that she's flipping it around and saying they are the ones that are unsafe in all Black spaces, when in fact there are many, many of the folks who go to all Black things and they talk about how they felt loved and embraced, not under any kind of threat or of harm or anything like that. So, once again, it's, factually not right. So we'll just keep going.
Some evidence of this oppression that's going on.
We have to deal with white defensiveness, white denial, white apathy. We have to deal with white feminism. We have to deal with Karens. We have to deal with white supremacy.
Okay, because there's no such thing as a black Karen. The difference between a black Karen and a white Karen is, if you have a confrontation with one, you'll make it out alive. If you have a confrontation with the other one, that's doubtful.
Patriarchy, mediocre white men. We have to deal with the white lash and the anger and the aggressiveness towards us. We have to deal with, as black women and femmes, being called aggressors, as always being seen as hostile.
Because you are. Have you seen the videos? Okay? You would be hard-pressed to find a video on the entire internet. And these are videos, by the way, that are going to be promoted, not suppressed. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a video of a white woman just randomly beating up black women. I don't...
I'm sorry, but this is literally comic relief, okay? The way that this... Okay, I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll say my piece. Go ahead, girl, because she's talking about you.
Right. It really is the insanity. Like, I always say that, supremacy is like, it is really a sickness. It really makes people really not have a real understanding of the world and society. And actually, it comes from such a deep level of self-hatred, right? Like, it comes from there. So everything that she's saying, like, it's like, girl, you're talking about you. You're talking about your lineage and your legacy. And this idea that, that we are more hostile, more aggressive is just absolutely not true. Because if that was the truth, trust me, if black people wanted revenge throughout the diaspora, my Lord, child, like, if black people wanted revenge, like, the world would look very different. And yet, even after the torture, the violence, the constant systemic barriers, the constant denied access to resources, the constant harm, we still are like, we just want to have our own thing and like build our own generational wealth and care for our own communities and like thrive. And yet that's our mindset. So, who is really the monsters, right? Who is really the uncivilized group of people? Well, we know, we have the proof to show that. And even in this video, we can see that.
Exactly. And I'm going to try to get through the rest of this. I'm going to try my best to get through the rest of this without just breaking down in laughter. So we'll continue on, because we really do want to talk about this from a broader scope. So literally to my brothers and sisters, we're just playing this for context, but we're going to have a more important conversation.
Think it exists.
When we are simply sharing our experience with a sense of confidence and autonomy and advocacy.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a new term for violence, is confidence, right? They're just confident, all right? And that's what we're threatened by. We are just threatened by a black woman's confidence. Okay.
When we actually speak to and call in our own humanity. And you know what, y'all? It's exhausting. It is exhausting.
Ever heard of black fatigue? Yeah, that's the white version of being exhausted, okay? I would love to have your problems. It honestly would be great to be a black person, to be honest. White people walk on eggshells around you. They don't want to bother you. They're never going to pick a fight with you because they know, again, they probably won't make it out alive. So I would love to trade my problems for yours, ma'am. You seem to be doing pretty well. You're sitting in a car, got a good job. You're allowed to be an open black supremacist, and you will never be fired for your job for that. That's pretty awesome. I would love to be the same. I would love to be the same. I would love to have some of that black privilege. Can I have some of that black privilege, please? It's just, read the room. Like, these people are delusional. This woman's even worse. She's like a black supremacist and a feminist. Is there anything worse than that? Truly, is there anything worse than that? I don't think so. And by the way, if you're going to make a video like this, let's back it up with some evidence. Whenever I make a video talking about black crime, I back it up with plenty of videos. By the way, they have to be the most tame, vanilla videos I can find because of YouTube guidelines. That's right. I can't show your behavior because it would get me a violation, right? Because it's that bad, okay? It's actually that bad. So the irony here is that this person is just projecting everything that white people have to deal with. And she's saying that that's what they have to deal with. Well, again, must be nice. Must be nice. Enjoy living in La La Land. Enjoy living in delusional you world. You know this woman goes to a therapist, by the way, and loves to talk about her problems. Can you imagine being on a date with this person? Ugh. Insufferable.
Okay, that's about all I could stomach. I couldn't take any more of that, so that's why I didn't bring any more. But this woman, honestly, the peak of hypocrisy. She's taking everything that black people go through and saying it's the folks that are going through that. And then she has the audacity, or like what I like to say, the caucasity, to say that you probably go to a therapist. And she's saying it must be nice to be black. I mean, this is a woman who obviously wants to be black and obviously is very envious of black people. I mean, she went to the drugstore and paid $50 for a foundation, and so she can put it all over her whole face and, put the bonnet on. And she was like, got her nails did, as she said. And, she even put on some music and she was dancing. It's like, you are the one who wants to be black. You want to be black so badly, and it bothers you so much. It burns your soul that we exist here, and it burns your soul that we actually want to separate, because why else would you do a whole segment on it? What have you got to say, sis?
Yeah, someone said like she would never say that to my face. And it's true. She wouldn't. Her whole platform at the end of the day is just making money. I mean, we'll talk about that. Not anymore because she's been demonetized. Finally, took way too long, but has been about making money off of the backs of black people. So the irony, it's like, you don't like black people. You don't want to be around black people. And yet you're mad that we want to have spaces for ourselves. And also your whole platform is based on, like, without black people, you wouldn't even be able to have a job. Like, you wouldn't even have the ability to make money. So it's like, the interesting thing is like the origin of European supremacy is so rooted in, they built everything off of the backs of black people, and they still are. They need black people in order for them to feel like a sense of anything. And you can definitely tell, like you said, I mean, she is jealous of black women, wishes she could be a black woman. Like, not to be disrespectful, like, I don't really even like to talk about people's looks or anything, but girl, like, come on. like it's just like, okay. And she prides herself on, like, her audience is like this, male, very, vanilla male audience that she's trying to cater to. And at the same time, you can tell that she has a deep hatred for black women and wishes that she could be black women, and wishes probably that she could be with a black man. But that's not going to make her money. What's going to make her money is hating and speaking and spewing violence against black people.
Exactly. And now that she's been demonetized, she's trying to start another channel where she says she's going to be talking about politics. And I'm sure she'll find a way to toe the line so that she doesn't end up getting demonetized over there as well. But at the end of the day, that's not really going to get her the kind of support and the kind of money that she was getting off the backs of black people. Okay. And she knows that. And that's why she's doing the circuit now, talking on all these other podcasters who are in line with her thought process and are also outstanding anti-Black racists that are boo-hooing with her. She's been doing this the round. But I just want to go to the comments real quick and read what some people are saying. Yeah, Scrooge did say it to her face, Karen. Kellen, hey Kellen, what's up? Kellen said she want to be Black. Good golly, Miss Molly said, oh, she's jelly. Yes, we agree, she's jelly. Sheila says, in America, those who are in sundown town breathe free all the time, and we better not be Black in their town taking breath. That is true. That is true. Yep, she's gaslighting. Yep. I'm not even. Yeah, I agree with you, Scrooge. Maybe like Salam said that she probably does want to be with a Black man. In so many words, that's what Scrooge is saying here. And then Jadi says the crazy part is when she put on the blackface, she used so much and the attention to detail. That's true. She was even reapplying when it was starting to like fade. She was reapplying it. She definitely wished she was Black. She went and got the darkest one too. You know how they love to tan themselves. They're not out laying out. They're spray tanning. They're doing the most. And there's even injectables. And they go to the lengths. Okay, they do. Let's see what else we got here. 100%. Laugh my AOO off. She's gonna age badly. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, people are not saying some nice things about her. And then somebody's saying the fact that it took so long. Yeah, that is another thing to get demonetized. Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, after she did the Halloween one, she was still on and she got monetized for that, and she was still on. So it took a while. And I feel like that might have been the straw, because I feel like that one really went viral and people were speaking out against it, and then finally YouTube pays attention. And so that's another thing to talk about, which is the stereotype, the difference in our reality versus the folks' reality, and what they can get away with for an extended period of time that we're just not afforded that luxury, right?
Right. Yeah, and we're not even here. Our interest is not even to bash and to say like evil things about this group of people. It's just like, stop doing the things. Like, stop, like, just focus on y'all, because at this point, at the end of the day, like, we understand, we know who you are, and we know, what is going to happen when we have to come up against you. So all we're asking is to like just leave us alone.
That's it.
Let it be, right? Like, whether it be in the continent of Africa, whether it be in the Caribbean, like, Black people here throughout North America, like, we're saying the same thing, like, just leave us alone. Well, I mean, cut the check, because you owe a lot. You owe Black people a lot.
Reparations. Hello.
Reparations and all the resources, but also leave us alone, because at the end of the day, I always say that for me, like, when I'm in spaces with my community, that is when I can actually feel the most at ease, because it's traumatic to constantly have to go through this, like how this impacts our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health. You know what I'm saying? And studies are showing now, research shows that when we are in European majority spaces, like, it actually impacts our physiological health. Like, our heart, our stress, like, it impacts us. And so our sleep, our anxiety. And so it's like, we need these spaces. They are necessary. So just go about your ways, and like, go live your life. And how about you try to create a career that has nothing to do with Black people? Just develop something that has nothing to do with us and see what happens. Because
Exactly.
they need us, really.
Which leads us to the next topic that we're going to talk about, like on a more serious note, is just the overall culture of the folks. And I'm just going to talk about the subset of folks that are outstanding anti-black racists. Like they literally, it just bothers them to even be in a space or see black people, to the point where they're telling us, go back to where you came from, and they don't even know where we came from. Or the systemic barriers that we face in healthcare, in law enforcement, in the legal world, in public spaces, racially profiled. We can't even just go in a store without being followed around, or all of a sudden you pop up as an employee and, can I help you? No, if I need help, I'll let you know. I know I've gone through it many times, where I'll walk into a store, and next thing you know, the clerk is like pretending she's looking for something or looking at something, or all of a sudden you're miraculously uh stocking a shelf in front of me, and all that other stuff. It's like, look, why can't you just leave us alone? What is this obsession that you have with us? It's like a love-hate relationship. I want to be you, but I hate you. I want your culture, but I don't want you doing the culture. Can we talk about this? I would imagine that this is something that you might be part of your curriculum when you're out here teaching anti-racism in these institutions and virtually. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually, because I'm like an annoying kind of academic. Unfortunately, I come into spaces and I'm like, I create lists. So I'm like, what is it that I want to share? So bear with me, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna share a couple things. We know actually the impact of Black folks in European spaces. We have more exposure to racism, right? Microaggressions, profiling, discrimination, isolation. We often being the only Black person in schools, work, or community environments. We have racial stress, so constant code switching, right? Constantly having to put on this mask in order to survive. We have to manage, their comfort. So we're constantly having to be like, okay, I can't say or do anything that's going to make them feel uncomfortable, because that could impact my actual safety, my well-being, or my economic, my job. We have, pressure to assimilate. Like, we're told that we have to like leave parts of ourselves in order to exist, which is really traumatic. And then we have like barriers to success. So bias in hiring, education, and then safety systems. And then the benefit of like being in like a Black only affinity space, or being in our communities and having Black only spaces, which they would call segregation, would be psychological safety, right? We have a space free from racism, judgment, and code switching. We have relief from racial stress. We have cultural affirmation, right? We have that joy. We understand each other, the colloquialisms. We have the community and belonging. We have healing and restoration, right? So recovery from all of that harm. And then we have like honest conversations. We can talk about things within our own communities that we need to heal. And then we have organizing, power, and building, right? So it's like we need those spaces more than anything, is the reality.
Right. And when we do have our spaces, going really back into history, they come and they burn it down, right? They're like, we're not happy. We're not happy. And you and I are both in Canada, and we know that the history of Black people in Canada goes all the way back to the 1600s. And stay tuned, family, because Selam and I will be doing some live streams educating the people about the history of Black people in this here country known as the Great White North. And, we thrived with little, and we still managed to make a life and build for ourselves, building cities within cities. And it didn't matter how much or how, I should say, how little they gave us, we still managed to build and make something. And it, again, bothered their soul. So they would come and they would just annihilate it or run us out. So it's one of those things that it goes all the way back and forward to today, where it's like this, what they call the great replacement theory. There's this fear. There's this fear that, our power, which they know is massive. Okay. Our power, our intelligence, our excellence, our brilliance, everything that we have is our culture. It is our culture. They don't have culture. They don't have it. They don't have culture. If you think about anything, music, food, you name it, it came and originated from us, the first humans to
Mm-hmm.
make it in this here earth. And that is what causes problems. In this case, like I said, you are advocating for segregation, and it seemed to me like Miss Lilly was having a real problem with that. She seemed bothered by it. It's like, okay, which one is it? So she fits in that narrative of I love you but I hate you. you know
Mm-hmm.
it's like that in between.
Yeah, it really is projection, right? Like it's just it's jealousy. You know, people think that like racism, we've been taught that racism is about hate, but it's actually about jealousy. You know, because when Europeans came to the continent, like you were saying, the lie that we've been told is that they came because they were like, oh, we want to come and help you to become more civilized. It's like, no, their communities and cultures were not civilized. Our lands, you know, in the continent where the first peoples, you know, originate from, was already, we had kingdoms and we had beautiful civilizations. They came there to learn about science. They came there to learn about math, about astrology. They came there to learn about culture, about bathing. Like they came to learn about bathing.
And
Okay.
that's still going on. They're still asking about rags, and do you use a wash rag, and why do you wash your legs? I don't wash my legs. I mean, everything. And there's a black TikTok where they go to learn how to bathe. And by the way, I'm not saying all. Let's
No.
be clear. We're not saying all. And so I Teresa, thank you. Teresa saying, I do agree with you, Emma. I'm an elderly white of Polish origin. There you go. Thank you so much. And so I'm just saying, not all. Let us be clear about that.
Yeah, and I mean the reality is like, okay, so we know that the people who, you know, the Europeans that we talk about the most in terms of the violence perpetuated is of course within the North American context, right? We're talking about Canada, we're talking about America. But the reality is like the real OGs, you know, were the Portuguese and the British and the Danish and the Dutch and you know, Spain, and who have perpetuated intense violence. So yes, I hear what they're saying. Like, you know, I think a lot of Europeans need to reconnect to their own culture and like connect to that rather than, you know, attempting to steal from Black culture, is one aspect. But also they need to take accountability for their legacy and for their history. It's like, it may not be you, it may not be specifically you, but you still benefit from that. You know, it still comes with that benefit, because it's not by accident that Black people experience the most disparities across the globe. Because if we think that's by accident, then we're saying that Black people are inherently inferior, which we know is not true. So it's like, you know, that it's like they still, it may not be you as a European, but you still benefit from it. So it's still your legacy to have to take accountability for.
Yeah, and I get a lot of messages, and I know you do. I know you do. God knows you do. You get a lot of messages, hate messages. I do too. I get a lot of threats and stuff. Whenever I put the truth in front, I've been called everything but a child of God, okay? Everything. And I know you have as well. And I always say that, when I'm asked, because sometimes I get asked, why do you hate me? Why do you hate us? What have I done to you? And, my answer is always, look, it's not you that I hate. I don't hate you. I hate the conduct of your people, your ancestors, and what was done to us and what continues to be done to us. So, one of the things that I'm always telling the folks that ask me that question is I encourage you to educate yourself.
Right.
Educate yourself, because look, the days of my day, there was no Black history taught when I was in school. There was no books in libraries. There was nothing. But today, the amount of resources that exist now, and you've got anti-racism educators like you out here in these streets, risking yourself out there in these streets, okay? And the streets are alive in this country with an outstanding anti-Black racists. So I just always say the two things for me is, the solution to the folks who are spending so much energy being mad at the history that we want to teach, at
Mhm.
the fact that we want to teach you about anti-racism, the fact that we want to show you and expose what's still going on to this day gets you so mad. Take that energy and, for one thing, listen to what we're saying. Listen,
Yeah.
because they will never be able to live in our skin. They will never be able to empathize or even have a semblance of what it feels like for
Mhm.
us. So it starts with listening and then having the willingness to educate yourself.
Right.
Otherwise, it will never end. It will never end. You'll just be raising up more kids like this, which we know still does exist because we've got little kids that are just literally products of their environment. I call them little junior anti-Black racists that are,
Mhm.
that's all they learn. My mommy told me that I'm not allowed to play with you. I was told that when I was a kid growing up in the racist province of Quebec,
Mhm.
where they would literally say to me, my mommy said, or my mommy and daddy said, I can't play with you because you're Black, even
Yeah.
though they want to, because kids don't really see that.
Mhm.
They're just, they see somebody that they like, right?
Right.
So that's my thing is I feel like that culture needs like real education, but there has to be a willingness.
Facts. And the truth is, like someone said in the comments, like, what we hate is the system, the
Exactly.
system. Because the reality is, one thing I always teach in my sessions is like, not only did your system that y'all created, like you literally built your power, your wealth, your domination, you built that off of the backs of Black people, right? So you did that. So it's a false sense of superiority. It's not superior. It's actually from a place of very uncivilized, extreme violence. And also, it's like when you don't know the truth and you're not willing to hear the truth, like you were saying, it's like you're so disconnected from your humanity. Like you will never actually. It's like from The Color Purple, right? When he's like, when she says, like, you will never. What's that quote?
Nothing, what is it? Nothing but strength will keep you from it, or something along those lines, she said.
Not that one. The one where she says something like until you do right by me.
Oh yes, that one. Yes, what she said to the husband. Yes.
Yeah, like until you do right by Black people, the original human beings, by Black African people, y'all will never be right. They
Never.
will never be okay in your spirit. And your spirit will never be right until you right those wrongs. That's just the
Exactly.
law of like the universe and spirituality and all things, right? You cannot escape your past, and you cannot escape your current, all the systems that are currently built on everything that you built. So it's like it's actually good for you as a human being to do that work.
Exactly. And like Jadi says, it starts with reparations. We already said cut a check. And, even here in Canada, for the over 200 years of slavery that took place here, and, Salam knows this as well. I mean, she's out here, like I said, in these streets educating. But we got, I don't know, these quasi apologies that keep floating around, and it's piecemeal. Apologize to the armed forces, apologize for the number 2 construction battalion, which I'm not saying they are not deserving of, but that's just not good enough.
Mm-mm.
And when it comes to us, they feel like that's enough. We're apologizing. Our former prime minister said, I'm sorry. No, or we're sorry. Okay, what else? So I agree with you when you say reparations for sure. But I think in my lifetime, I don't know that we're going to see that
Mm.
in this here country of Canada. I don't think we're going to see that.
No.
But that's why we're looking at other things, like what else can we do, or what else can we suggest to the folks who are actually willing, because you know they're too busy being in their feelings when we put the truth in front of them, that they don't hear anything. And you and I can both use an example with me with my locks, and you got beautiful braids, and people just violate my space, and this is the folks now, they literally just reaching in and saying, can I touch your hair, or do you wash it, or how do you wash it? And when you try to explain to them, and I'm just using this as an example, when you
Yeah.
try to explain to them, look, what you are doing is racist. What? What are you talking about? My boyfriend is black. My children are black. I just never seen that. So you're not willing to listen. You've already shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already gone into the fragility mode,
Mm-hmm.
and you've now become the victim when you were violating my space and my person, right? And so that's just another example of how it's the unwillingness.
Right. And it's the entitlement. Like they feel
That
entitled to
too.
our body, right? Like they feel so deeply entitled to our bodies. Like I can't count. Like I feel like sometimes I feel like the racism in Canada is just so much more extreme because these people really feel the caucasity to just like approach you, ask you, you're going through a drive-through, ask you about your hair. You going to the dentist, ask you about your hair. I remember when my son was sitting in the chair with his he was at the orthodontist and I wasn't there with him. He's around 15. And he had that like, Fresh Prince cut, the box cut,
Yeah.
sitting in the chair, and he has all the things in his mouth and he can't talk. So he's kind of in a vulnerable situation. And they start going, oh, wow, that's so interesting. Spongy. And they start touching his hair. And I'm thinking, you don't understand that that is abuse and that's harassment, and that in any other situation, like we know what words we'd be using right now. Like, what is going on that you feel so deeply entitled? And that is something that they have to face for themselves and look at. And we're bringing the insight to you, and you have an opportunity to actually be a better human being. And some folks are sharing about reparations. Reparations is definitely possible. Look what we saw during COVID in terms of how much money was dispersed. All of a sudden, like the government was like, oh, we have like billions of dollars. Look how much money goes overseas.
Oh,
Like, do
did
you
you
know?
see that Canada's donating another, or not donating, but giving another 236 million to the Ukraine yet again?
Like
Yes.
these numbers, these numbers, like 250 billion, another 500 billion, another, and it's like, no, you just don't want to, and you don't, because you don't believe that Black people are fully human. If you actually did, every other group who has been violated has received reparations. In fact, enslavers,
Yeah. Canada gave reparations to Japan.
oh, of course, the Japanese got
Yeah.
that for the internment camps, absolutely.
Oh, Ursa wants to know if Canada had enslavement. Oh, it sure did.
It did. I'll tell
It
you
sure did. We sure did. Stay tuned. We will be back because, I think it's about time we start really telling people about what has gone on here in Canada, because people really do have this
what.
misconception that Canada is just this nice, warm and fuzzy country, and everybody's so nice here, and everybody just holds hands and sings kumbaya and skips down a garden path, and there's no racism here. Even people of the folks that are here and see it are like, I'm so shocked. We don't do that here. This isn't the Canadian way. It's like, for
Mhm.
you, it's not. But we need to make sure we let people know. Okay.
Yeah, there's an author named Desmond Cole, a Black author in Canada, and he has an amazing book where he talks about what it looks like in Canada. And just to quickly say for y'all, Google Marie Joseph Angelique. She's a Black enslaved woman in Canada, and her story of how she was tortured, in Canada for all to see. Because we typically don't know the names, right? They try to erase. What Canada actually is amazing at is their PR and their erasure. Like they can
Erasure is a thing, man. I tell you, the way that they bury the truth, even in news, like as a journalist, when you see stories, they will deliberately eliminate the race of the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
They limit the race. The race, they'll just say a man. And and it's like, we know what happened here, but they make sure that they're they really careful about how they disperse the information. So it takes a lot of digging, and in my case, fortunately, created some contacts where I can be like, who was it? So yes.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. Y'all, we could spend like hours telling you our own stories, our own family, and just the stories within the Canadian context. It's actually, in many ways, we sometimes say that, it's worse here
It
because,
is.
yeah, because of just how much they hide, similar to the UK. The UK and Canada is similar in the sense that they hide the information and the data, and yet the UK has more data. And for us as Black people in Canada, it's almost impossible to even get any focus on the Black experience in Canada in any capacity. They just attempt to erase it completely.
Oh yeah, the race-based data is a real problem here in health, in law enforcement. It's starting to get better, but it's still somewhat fragmented. You're really not able to get, even when I try to research it, it's like, well, we don't have any data specifically that says, you know how much times I met with that response, because there's still a very severe lack of race-based data. And then, as we have all these bills. I call them big, beautiful bills with an extreme amount of sarcasm. One of which is the hate crime bill, which is Bill C9, where they're talking about, in jailing people who are perpetuating hate. And once again, Black people are not listed here. Okay, it is for the most part very specific things that point to the Jewish community, for example, or the LGBTQ plus community, but we're still not seeing anything for us. That's why I'm saying, as far as reparations, I don't know, maybe when I'm no longer above ground, God willing, we'll be able to see that. But I think really and truly, just in wrapping up, I just want us to really talk about final thoughts, final words about just this culture. And I mean, how we could ever be able to get them to see how extremely dangerous and harmful their actions are. And um, for them to really understand that there would be no culture if it were not for us. I mean, I'm sure some do understand, and that points to the envy. But for those who just are just too busy being fearful and envious and all that other stuff and not willing to listen or learn, what would your final words be? Like, you're in a class somewhere, and so you're in front of this snow citizens, and they're asking you this question. How would you respond?
Well, the way that I typically respond, and in conclusion, around the harm and the racism that they perpetuate, I always say that, you know, the wild part about all this is these systems are killing them too. Like, they're actually voting and making decisions against themselves. Like, you actually would prefer, like, racism is such an intense drug that it will keep you away from you also being able to have like health and well-being and thrive, because you want to operate in a system that is so sickly, it's so disgusting. And us, as as Black people, we have been trying to like give y'all the medicine, like give society the medicine as the original peoples. And so I would say that, here's what I always say, and I'm gonna keep it real. Why would they ever try to do better by us when they they're placing their parents in like elderly homes, retirement home? Like, they are completely detached from their own culture. They're not protecting themselves from mass shootings. They're not protecting their own communities from the violence that's happening. So I say, like, do your own healing work, because at the end of the day, I don't believe, if I'm being honest, as an anti-racism educator, someone who does this work every single day, that the collective of them are going to change until these systems begin to really impact them in real ways, right?
Right.
Until they have to actually deal with the impacts of loss of resources and so forth, right? And so yeah, I think, like, do y'all, if I'm being honest, and then like cut the check.
And let us separate and leave us be,
Yeah,
okay?
because I used to have that perspective, like, okay, you can like educate and you can teach, and then we got to just bring people along. And I realized that like the systems are just way too deeply baked in. Like it's within Canada, within the US, within the continent of Africa, within the Caribbean. I mean, it's global. It's a global system. And so I think more importantly, I would give the message to us and say, like, we need to like continue to create our own spaces and try to build our own opportunities, because at the end of the day, I don't know, they got so much mess that they have to clean up that I can't see the collective really understanding that until they actually suffer. Really.
I agree. And that's why even through exposure, for me, that's what I love. And I'm always saying boycott this place, when we start taking our 1.3 trillion away and put it in our own and build our own. And I'm constantly, like I say this moreover, this is why we need our own major institutions. This is why we need to have our own, by us, for us, built for us, and I know it'll still bother the folks. It will burn their britches so badly. But you know what? We cannot concern ourselves with that anymore. We really have to concern ourselves with building legacy for those who are coming up behind us, because what will this world be if it's like this now and more Black babies are being born every day? And what kind of world will they live in? So that's why I always stress the importance of us unifying and stop all of this African versus Black American versus Jamaican. And I don't like you Africans. Like, what? But that's a whole other topic for
We'll do that another day.
Stay tuned, family. But I'm just gonna wrap it up. We're not gonna take too much more of your time. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters, for hanging out with me and Selam for an hour and 1 minute. I appreciate you greatly. We will be back again, so keep watch for it. But until then, please make sure, if you haven't done it already, download the African Diaspora News Channel app from your Google or Apple store. I promise you, we're talking about unity. We're talking about building for us. This is an app that's by us, for us. We're not censored. We can deliver what we want to deliver, say what we want to say, and just, be blackety black, good black. Okay. Good and very good. So download that app. And this is the new clap. Thanks so much, Sister Selam. See you guys again. See you.